Tu Diem, hello, not hate. Did Toan's mother secretly pity Diem? In the silence between anger and pride, sometimes the heart whispers what the lips cannot say. Tu Diem stood trembling, believing herself unwanted, yet beneath the stern gaze of CEO Toan's mother, there lingered something deeper and unspoken softness. Was it pity? Was it compassion? Or was it the first fragile crack in a wall of hatred that had divided them for so long? Love and forgiveness often hide in the shadows, waiting for a moment to be revealed. Perhaps Toan's mother did not truly despise Diem after all. Perhaps, behind every harsh word, there was a silent prayer for the girl who had suffered more than anyone knew. The rain had just stopped, leaving the streets glistening with silver reflections. Tu Diem sat alone under the dim glow of a street lamp, her thin frame trembling from both the cold and the fever that refused to leave her body. She had nowhere else to go, no one else to turn to. The world seemed to have abandoned her. What Diem did not know was that someone had been watching from the shadows. Madame Lan, the mother of CEO Toan, the woman who had once stood firmly against her, who claimed Diem had no place in their family, now lingered silently at a distance. Pride kept her from stepping forward, yet her heart betrayed her. Each time she saw Diem's weakened figure, a pang of pity cut through her chest. Lan remembered the first time she saw Diem, fragile, yet unyielding, with eyes that carried both sorrow and hope. She had dismissed her then, blinded by fear that her son's life would be ruined by this girl's past. But now, watching Diem struggle against sickness and hunger, Lan's certainty began to falter. This was not the face of a schemer. This was a girl who had endured far too much, yet still clung to life with quiet strength. When Diem collapsed one evening outside the hospital, it was Lan who rushed to her side. With trembling hands, she called the nurse, stayed through the night, and made sure Diem was cared for. But when Toan arrived the next morning, Lan slipped away quietly, unable to face him. She could not admit that her heart had softened, that pity had taken root where hatred once stood. Diem never forgot that night. She remembered a gentle hand brushing her forehead, a voice urging her to drink medicine. And when she learned the truth that it was Toan's mother who had saved her, her heart filled with confusion. Why would the woman who despised her show such compassion? The answer lingered unspoken, hidden in the silence of Lan's actions. It was not hate that bound her, but fear. Fear of losing her son, fear of being wrong, fear of letting her heart care for someone she had once rejected. Yet behind that fear was something far more powerful: pity, and perhaps the beginning of acceptance. For the first time, Diem dared to believe that maybe Toan's mother did not hate her after all. That evening, the silence in Toan's house was heavy. Diem sat by the window, her eyes fixed on the garden where the moonlight traced delicate patterns on the flowers. Her mind replayed the moment she discovered the truth that it was Madame Lan who had saved her. Gratitude swelled in her chest, but so did doubt. Could it really be that the woman who once rejected her now felt pity, or even something close to compassion? The sound of footsteps behind her broke her thoughts. She turned, and her breath caught. Madame Lan was standing in the doorway, her figure framed by the warm glow of the hallway lamp. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them carried both tension and something unspoken, fragile yet undeniable. Gathering her courage, Diem rose slowly. Her voice trembled, but her heart urged her forward. Madame Lan, I need to ask you something. Do you truly hate me? Lan's lips parted, but no words came immediately. Her eyes softened, though pride lingered in their depths. She took a step closer, studying the young woman who stood before her, thin, pale, yet with a quiet fire that no hardship had extinguished. Finally Lan spoke, her tone lower and gentler than Diem had ever heard. Hate? No. I thought I did. I wanted to, because you frightened me. Diem, you appeared in my son's life when danger surrounded him. You carried a past I did not understand, and I let fear turn into judgment. Diem's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Then why did you save me? Why stay by my side when I was sick, only to disappear when Toan came? Lan's hands tightened around the shawl draped across her shoulders. She exhaled deeply, her composure faltering. Because pity is easier to give in silence. Because if I admitted it aloud, it meant I had been wrong about you, and that is not easy for a mother like me. A long pause filled the room. Diem lowered her gaze, tears slipping down her cheeks. But they were not tears of pains, they carried relief, even hope. Lan stepped closer and, almost hesitantly, reached out to lift Diem's chin. Do not mistake my silence for hate, child. Perhaps it was my way of protecting myself. But I see now you are stronger than I imagined. Strong enough to survive what others would not. At that moment, Toan entered the room. He stopped, his eyes widening as he saw the two women facing each other, the wall between them slowly crumbling. His heart raced, realizing he was witnessing the first fragile steps toward acceptance, the moment where pity might bloom into something deeper. Toan stood frozen for a heartbeat, afraid that the smallest movement would shatter the fragile moment unfolding before his eyes. But when he saw the shimmer of tears on Diem's cheeks and the rare softness in his mother's gaze, he knew he had to step forward. Slowly, he walked toward them, his voice steady yet tender. Mother, Diem, this is what I've been praying for, that the walls between us could finally break. Madame Lan turned to face her son, her pride battling with the emotions written clearly on her face. Toan, she said quietly, you don't understand. A mother fears for her child in ways no one else can. I saw danger in her presence, uncertainty in her past. I wanted to shield you from Panavan if it meant standing against her. Toan's expression softened. He reached for Diem's hand and held it firmly, then looked back at his mother. And yet, when she was at her weakest, you chose to save her. That is not the action of a heart filled with hate. It is proof that you saw her humanity, maybe even her worth. Mother, that means more to me than you realize. Diem's voice broke as she finally spoke. Madame Lan, I never wanted to steal your son from you. I only wanted a place where I could belong, where my past would not define me. I may not deserve your kindness, but I will always be grateful for it. The room fell into silence again. Lan's eyes lingered on Diem, this girl who had suffered rejection, yet still spoke with humility and sincerity. Slowly, she extended her hand, resting it gently over Diem's. Her words came softly, almost reluctantly, but they carried the weight of truth. Perhaps I was too harsh. Perhaps I let my fear blind me. You are not the enemy I imagined. And if my son has chosen you, maybe it is time I learned to see you as more than just your past. Diem gasped, her tears flowing freely now, but they were tears of relief. Toan's heart surged with joy. He placed his other hand over theirs, uniting the three together. In that fragile moment, pity transformed into the first spark of acceptance. The days that followed were quiet but filled with a new, fragile peace. Madame Lan did not openly declare her acceptance of Diem, but her actions began to speak louder than her guarded words. She would leave bowls of warm soup outside Diem's room, or quietly instruct the maid to bring her extra blankets at night. Diem noticed these gestures but never mentioned them, afraid that calling attention might make them disappear. One morning, Toan prepared to leave for the construction site. He kissed his mother on the cheek, then turned to Diem with a smile that warmed her heart. Stay and rest today. I'll be back before dinner. After he left, Diem found herself alone in the vast house with Madame Lan. The silence was uncomfortable at first, stretching like a wall between them. But the peace did not last long. By midday, unexpected visitors arrived, relatives from Lan's side of the family. They had heard rumors about Diem, about her troubled past, and the scandal of her previous marriage. With sharp voices and piercing eyes, they began questioning why such a woman was allowed to stay in Toan's home. Diem's hands trembled as the whispers grew louder, accusations slicing through the air. She lowered her gaze, shame pressing down on her chest. This was what she had always feared, being exposed, humiliated, rejected again. But before she could retreat, Madame Lan rose from her chair. Her presence silenced the room. "That is enough," she said firmly, her voice carrying the weight of authority. "Tu Diem is under this roof because I allow it. She is not to be judged by rumors or shadows of the past. If my son trusts her, then so will I." The relatives exchanged shocked glances. Some protested, but Lan's eyes flashed with steel. "I will not hear another word against her. Leave, if you cannot show respect." Diem looked up, stunned. For the first time, Madame Lan had not only shown her pity, but had stepped into the storm to shield her. Her throat tightened with emotion, tears threatening to fall. When the visitors finally departed, the house grew quiet once more. Diem whispered, her voice trembling, "Madame Lan, you defended me." Lan turned to her, a softness hidden beneath her composed expression. "Do not misunderstand. It will take time for me to forget my doubts. But today, I realize something. If I do not protect you, then I fail both you and my son. Perhaps it is not hate I feel after all." Diem's tears fell freely then, not from sorrow, but from a fragile, growing hope. And for the first time, she believed that acceptance might truly be possible. The story of Diem and Madame Lan reveals that the line between hate and compassion is not always clear. Sometimes what we perceive as hatred is only fear, pride, or the inability to understand another person's pain. Madame Lan believed she despised Diem, but when faced with the girl's vulnerability, her heart began to soften. Through small, silent acts of kindness, and later through her courage to defend Diem against others, she proved that compassion often grows where we least expect it. From Diem, we learn the power of humility and patience. Instead of answering judgment with anger, she allowed kindness, no matter how quiet, to take root in her heart. Her gratitude became the bridge that slowly closed the distance between her and Toan's mother. From Toan's mother, we learn that pride can blind us, but love has the power to heal our fears. A true test of strength is not in holding on to judgment, but in letting it go for the sake of others. By standing up for Diem, she discovered that protecting her was also a way of protecting her son's happiness. The lesson is clear. True acceptance takes time, and often begins with the smallest gestures of compassion. When we choose to see beyond prejudice, we not only heal others, but also free ourselves.